Chapter 21. The preparations for my marriage now went on apace. Shoals of presents began to arrive for Sybil as well as for myself, and I was introduced to a hitherto undemonstrated phase, as far as I personally was concerned, of the vulgarity and hypocrisy of fashionable society. Everyone knew the extent of my wealth, and how little real necessity there was for offering me or my bride-elect costly gifts. Nevertheless, all our so-called friends and acquaintances strove to outvie each other in the gross cash value, if not in the good taste, of their various donations. Had we been a young couple bravely beginning the world on true love, in more or less uncertainty as to our prospects and future income, we should have received nothing either useful or valuable. Everyone would have tried to do the present giving in as cheap and mean a way as possible. Instead of handsome services of solid silver, we should have had a meager collection of plated teaspoons. Instead of costly editions of books sumptuously enriched with fine steel engravings, we might possibly have had to express our gratitude for a 10-shilling family Bible. Of course, I fully realized the actual nature and object of the lavish extravagance displayed on this occasion by our social sect. Their gifts were merely so many bribes, sent with a purpose which was easy enough to fathom. The donors wished to be invited to the wedding in the first place. After that, they sought to be included in our visiting list, and foresaw invitations to our dinners and house parties, and, more than this, they calculated on our influence in society, and the possible chance there might be in the dim future of our lending some of them money should the pressing occasion require it. In the scant thankfulness and suppressed contempt their adulatory gift offerings excited, Sybil and I were completely at one. She looked upon her array of glittering valuables with the utmost weariness and indifference, and, flattering my self-love by assuring me that the only thing she cared at all for were the riviere of sapphires and diamonds I had given her as a betrothal pledge, together with an engagement ring of the same lustrous gems. Yet, I noticed she also had a great liking for Lucio's present, which was a truly magnificent masterpiece of the jeweler's art. It was a girdle in the form of a serpent, the body entirely composed of the finest emeralds, and the head of rubies and diamonds. Flexible as a reed, when Sybil put it on, it appeared to spring and coil round her waist like a living thing, and breathe with her breathing. I did not much care for it myself, as an ornament for a young bride, seemed to me quite unsuitable, but as everyone else admired it and envied the possessor of such a superb jewels, I said nothing of my own distaste. Diane Chesney had shown a certain amount of delicate sentiment and refinement in her offering. It was a very exquisite marble statue of Psyche, mounted on a pedestal of solid silver and ebony. Sybil thanked her, smiling coldly. "You have given me an emblem of the soul," she said. "No doubt you remember I have no soul of my own." And her airy laugh had chilled poor Diana to the marrow, as the warm-hearted little American herself, with tears, assured me. At this point I saw very little of Romanes. I was much occupied with my lawyers on the question of settlements. Messrs. Bentham and Elias rather objected to the arrangement by which I gave half of my fortune to my intended wife unconditionally, but I would brook no interference, and the deed was drawn up, signed, sealed, and witnessed. The Earl of Elton could not sufficiently praise my unexampled generosity, my noble character, and walked about, eulogizing me everywhere, till he almost turned himself into a public advertisement of the virtues of his future son-in-law. He seemed to have taken a new lease of life. He flirted with Diana Chesney openly, and of his paralyzed spouse, with the fixed stare and deathly grin, he never spoke, and, I imagine, never thought. Sybil herself was always in the hands of dressmakers and milliners, and we only saw each other every day for a few minutes' hurried chat. On these occasions she was always charming, even affectionate, and yet, though I was full of passionate admiration and love for her, I felt that she was mine merely as a slave might be mine, that she gave me her lips to kiss as if she considered I had a right to kiss them because I had bought them, and for no other reason. That her pretty caresses were studied, and her whole behavior the result of careful forethought and not natural impulsiveness. I tried to shake off this impression, but it still remained persistently. and clouded the sweetness of my brief courtship. Meanwhile, slowly and imperceptibly, my book dropped out of notice. Morganson presented a heavy bill of publishing costs, which I paid without a murmur. Now and then an allusion to my literary triumphs cropped up in one or another of the newspapers, but otherwise no one spoke of my famous work, and few read it. I enjoyed the same sort of cliquey reputation and public failure attending a certain novel entitled Marius the Epicurean. The journalists with whom I had come in contact began to drift away like flotsam and jetsam. I think they saw I was not likely to give many more reviewing dinners and suppers, and that my marriage with the Earl of Elton's daughter would lift me into an atmosphere where Grub Street could not breathe comfortably or stretch its legs at ease. The heap of gold on which I sat as on a throne divided me gradually even from the back courts and lower passages leading to the Temple of Fame. And, almost unconsciously to myself, I retreated step by step, shading my eyes as it were from the sun, and seeing the glittering turrets in the distance, with a woman's slight figure entering the lofty portico, turning back her laurelled head to smile sorrowfully, and with the divinest pity upon me, ere passing in to salute the gods. Yet, if I asked about it, everyone on the press would have said that I had a great success. Only I, realized the bitterness and truth of my failure. I had not touched the heart of the public. I had not succeeded in so waking my readers out of the torpor of their dull and commonplace everyday lives that they should turn towards me with outstretched hands, exclaiming, more of these thoughts which comfort and inspire us, which make us hear God's voice proclaiming, all's well above the storms of life. I had not done it. I could not do it. And worst of all, and the worst of my feelings on this point, was the idea that possibly I might have done it had I remained poor. The strongest and healthiest pulse in the composition of a man, the necessity for hard work, had been killed in me. I knew I need not work, that the society in which I now moved thought it ridiculous if I did work, that I was expected to spend money and enjoy myself in the idiotic fashion of what the upper 10 term enjoyment. My acquaintances were not slow in suggesting plans for the dissipation of my surplus cash. Why did I not build myself a marble palace on the Riviera, or a yacht to completely outshine the Prince of Wales Britannia? Why did I not start a theatre, or found a newspaper? Not one of my social advisers once proposed my doing any private personal good with my fortune. When some terrible case of distress was published, and subscriptions were raised to relieve the object or objects of suffering, I invariably gave 10 guineas, and allowed myself to be thanked for my generous assistance. I might as well have given 10 pence, for the guineas were no more to me in comparison than the pence. When funds were started to erect a statue to some great man who had, in the usual way of the world, been a victim of misrepresentation till his death, I produced my 10 guineas again, when I could easily have defrayed the whole cost of the memorial, with honour to myself, and been none the poorer. With all my wealth, I did nothing noteworthy. I showered no unexpected luck in the way of the patient, struggling workers in the hard schools of literature and art. I gave no largesses among the poor, and when a thin, eager-eyed curate with a strong, earnest face called upon me one day to represent, with much nervous diffidence, the hideous sufferings of some of the sick and starving in his district down by the docks, and suggested that I might possibly care to alleviate a few of these direful sorrows as a satisfaction to myself, as well as for the sake of human brotherhood, I am ashamed to say I let him go with a sovereign, for which he heaped coals of fire on my head by his simple "God bless you, and thank you." I could see he was himself in the grip of poverty. I could have made him and his district gloriously happy by a few strokes of my pen on a cheque for an amount I should have never missed, and yet I gave him nothing but that one piece of gold, and so allowed him to depart. He invited me back. He invited me, with earnest good will, to go and see his starving flock. For, believe me, Mr. Tempest, he said, I should be sorry if you thought, as some of the wealthy are unhappily apt to do, that I seek money simply to apply it to my own personal uses. If you would visit the district yourself, and distribute whatever you please with your own hand, it would be infinitely more gratifying to me, and would have far better effect on the minds of the people. For, sir, the poor will not always be patient under the cruel burdens they have to bear. I smiled indulgently, and assured him, not without a touch of satire in my tone, that I was convinced all clergymen were honest and unselfish, and then I sent my servant to bow him out with all possible politeness, and that very day, I remember, I drank at my luncheon chateau at 25 shillings a bottle. I entered into these apparent trifling details because they all help to make up the sum and substance of the deadly consequences to follow, and also because I wish to emphasize the fact that in my actions I only imitated the example of my compeers. Most rich men today follow the same course as I did, and active personal good to the community is wrought by very few of them. No great deed of generosity illuminates our annals. Royalty itself leads no fashion in this. The royal gifts of game and cast-off clothing sent to our hospitals are too slight and conventional to carry weight. The entertainments for the poor, got up by some of the aristocrats at the East End, are nothing and less than nothing. They are weak sops to our tame lion couchant, offering in doubtful fear and trembling. For our lion is wakeful and somewhat restive. There is no knowing what may happen if the original ferocity of the beast is roused. A few of our over-rich men might considerably ease the load of cruel poverty in many quarters of the metropolis if they united themselves with a noble unselfishness in the strong and determined effort to do so, and eschew red tapeism and wordy argument, but they remain inert, spending solely on their own personal gratifications and amusements, and meanwhile there are dark signs of trouble brooding. The poor, as the lean and anxious curate said, will not always be patient. I must not here forget to mention that through some secret management of Romanes, my name, much to my own surprise, appeared on the list of competitors for the Derby. How, at so late an hour, this had been effected, I knew no more than where my horse Phosphor came from. It was a superb animal, but Romanes, whose gift to me it was, warned me to be careful as to the character of the persons admitted to the stables to view it, and to allow no one but the horse's own two attendants to linger near it long on any pretext. Speculation was very rife as to what Phosphor's capabilities really were. The grooms never showed him off to advantage during exercise. I was amazed when Lucio told me his man Emile would be the jockey. "Good heavens! Not possible!" I exclaimed. "Can he ride?" "Like the very devil," responded my friend with a smile. "He will ride Phosphor to the winning post."